Well, thank you very much, Simon, and welcome to everybody who's joined us for tonight's Evening With. Simon George will talk about what made him build the biggest model railway in England, the UK, I believe. You can tell us more about anybody who's tried to actually beat you on that record, but I think it would be a big undertaking. But, the extraordinary going to that size of railway and how long it took to build it, and also finding it a home so that it can actually stay safely when it's not out on the circuit. What's involved in the logistics when you take it out to see for other people to see. And obviously there'll be lots of other questions, not least, is it finished now? Or what plans do you have for the future? And I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions as we move forward. So really appreciate you giving us the time this evening. Thank you very much for joining us, and I will hand over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I just want to say to everybody, I'm humbled and flattered to be asked to come and talk about Heaton Lodge. It's been a long haul, if I'm honest. I think, if I diversify for a second, COVID actually helped me focus because, as probably we all know, there was at least 18 months where we could kind of knuckle down and there wasn't much else to do apart from build model railways. So that really helped me. But a bit about me, as Jackie said, my name's Simon George, I'm 55. I started building Heaton Lodge around about 2013. And again, just digressing very slightly, because I don't want to bore everybody with my interest in how it all started in railways. But my father was a clergyman, and he was actually a canon of Wakefield Cathedral, which is not far from here where I am. And his boss was Eric Tracy, who many of you may have heard of because he wrote lots of books about railway photography, and I think he wrote over 100 books on railway photography. And the bishop and my father were good friends, as well as being my father's boss, and they used to take me up to the Settle Carlisle line. And one of my earliest memories is actually being stood on the veranda of Dent Station signal box and watching a Class 40 come in to the station, which I think pulling a mineral train, which is probably, that's got to be probably mid 70s, early 70s, and that's really one of my first memories of that. So that's what I think implanted everything into my interest, really. And I'm sure everybody else has got similar stories. But after my father died in 1975 and Bishop Tracy actually died the year after, I went to boarding school. And to be quite honest, I wasted it and I absolutely hated every minute of it. But what it did do is it gave me long school holidays. And I never used to waste them. I used to get on a train. I think I was about 12 years old. Do you remember the old saver strips in the Class 110 DMUs? Sit on those bouncy seats and take myself off to Manchester Victoria, Manchester Piccadilly, etc., etc. And one day I just found this railway junction. Probably Heaton Lodge Junction's about 3 miles, probably 2 miles west of Mirfield Station in West Yorkshire. And it was a great location because it was 4 tracks. It was 1.5 miles of straight 4-line track, a bit like the East Coast Main Line in a lot of ways, but lots and lots of different traffic from coal trains going to and from the collieries and power stations. And what I used to love was, and I've said this so many times, so forgive me if you've heard it before, but I used to love as a child watching the lights of freight trains come from over a mile away and get more, bigger and bigger, and then go rumbling past. And it was always that I wanted to recreate when I started building Heaton Lodge kind of 8 years ago. So the idea of Heaton Lodge had always been in my mind all the way through my teenage years, in my 20s. And it was a happy time. And I just, the idea of doing it was simply, I wanted to recreate it. I'm the type of person that I've never, to be honest, done anything by halves. And once I've kind of got a project in mind, and I start acting on it, I try and beaver away until I've actually finished it and buttoned it up. But there was a lot of people at the time that when I did mention what I was planning to do, which was build a 200-foot long model railway, saying I was absolutely crazy, probably get half finished and then I'd lose interest. But to be honest, the more I did it, the more the interest actually magnified itself. But yeah, I decided to do it. There was a lot of research that started going into it. We'll move on to slides in a second, Jackie, but I just thought this was worth saying that I spent 4 years just in the evenings and the odd weekend researching the actual real location by downloading literally hundreds of photos from Flickr, etc., and then making a pictorial map, if you like, and just sellotaping everything together. So I'd got exactly what that 1.5 mile of track consisted of. And Jack will probably show you this picture in a second, and it's been shown so many times. But I downloaded a picture from Flickr back in about 2010 and noticed it was of a Class 56 diesel locomotive going past with a coal train. And I had it in my possession probably about a year before I zoomed up and realized that it was none other than me as a 12-year-old child on the fence looking at this train going past. And I knew instantly it was me because I used to have one of those haircuts that all school kids hated, you know, the Baldrick kind of haircut with a floppy blonde hair. But yeah, and really, I think if anything else, that was a sign, and it kind of inspired me to really get cracking with the project. And so yeah, after the research, it was just a case of trying to get everything put into place, because the two things that I really needed were the time to do it in, and I was running a business at the time, but fortunately I was just about to sell it, and the money, which fortunately some of it came from the business and the sale of the business, which when these two things enabled me to really get cracking with the layout. So yeah, Jackie, I don't know if you want to show that slide of me as a 12. It's probably one of the first ones.
Let me just
Yeah, slide 2 and 3, I think.
Oh, sorry,
All right.
clicked off it. Sorry about that.
No, don't worry. But yeah, I'll continue anyway. But yeah, so it was just a case of the one thing that I really wanted to replicate with Heaton Lodge was the gradient, because it's actually 1.3 scale miles in O gauge, which translates into 200 feet or 55 meters. But Heaton Lodge actually, although it was a 4-track main line, as I just mentioned, it ran on a gradient of 1 in 137. And to me, that was quite important to build that in. But if I'd have known what I know now, I would never have done that, because it created all manner of problems. But that said, it is really good fun to watch a 30, and I think some of you may have come to Harrogate or Shepton Mallet, but to see a 30-foot long freight train go up that gradient, which takes about 5-6 minutes, is actually quite, I still love it. It doesn't tire of me now anyway, to be honest. But yeah, I'll just let Jackie show that slide. There we are. So that's a class 56 going past Heaton Lodge. These two bridges actually are modelled, which you'll see soon. But yeah, the three guys on the fence, which the next slide, and I only zoomed this up years later, and that's me on the left-hand side with the Baldrick haircut and the stripy t-shirt. I still remember that t-shirt even now. And I saw that and I nearly spat my tea out, to be honest. I just couldn't believe it. But yeah, so that got a lot of airtime, but really inspired me to start really planning the model. So the first thing to really get over was a 200-foot model. Where on earth are we going to put it? What I decided to do was take a different way of building this model from probably most other people, in that there's 140 4-foot by 5-foot boards which join together to create the whole layout. And what I thought the best way of doing it was, in order not to become completely daunted by the task in hand, I would just make 140 dioramas which are joined together. So I started with one board, doing the scenery, learning how to do the scenery, and then went on from there. I don't know if you want to show the next slide, Jackie, which has got a picture of the we'll just actually digress a second. So this was the basement that I actually found, and I've been looking for ages to find somewhere to put this railway. By this time, I think this was early 2018. I built about 30 sections, 30 dioramas, if you like, of the railway. And they were in my bathroom, they were in my kitchen, they were all over the place. My girlfriend at the time was going absolutely crazy. So I knew I needed to get it out of there and get it into somewhere where I could build it. And in fact, I'd gone everywhere within 30 miles of industrial estates trying to find somewhere. But all these buildings were really, really expensive, you know, 60, 80,000 pounds a year. Couldn't afford it. And then literally on my doorstep, I found this derelict factory with this basement that you're looking at now, which is actually an old steel factory. And actually, I'm just going to tell you that these pillars that hold the whole factory up over it were built by the Victorians. I think it was late 1800s when this was built. And even before spirit levels and everything else, those pillars within millimeters, exactly the same distance apart and absolutely dead straight. And I always find it fascinating how these engineers, you know, made such good work out of, you know, with no instruments that we use today. So that's basically how I got the keys to the warehouse. There was no heating, there was no lighting. So I knew that before I even started continuing with the layout, I'd have to take 6 months, 7 months off and completely renovate that basement, which again, I kind of did on my own. And I bought 5,000 litres of white paint, donned a complete oxygen tanks and a white suit, so I could spray this paint at high velocity and cover every single bit of surface area you can see there. So it was quite a task, and the paint went everywhere. It went in my eyes, up my nose, and my ears. It was awful, but I had to put up with that for 6 months to get it looking something like. So if you go into the next slide, Jackie, I think it'll show it coming on. So I decided to build a workshop in the middle of the basement because obviously it's a service trains, and I wanted a little living room, which you're looking at now. So when I was completely hacked off with a day, I could just go and fall asleep on the sofa inside. It actually still works. That it's really good. So we've got a living room there, we've got a workshop next to it, and then a paint shop next door. And I'd never ever done any DIY, I should say, at this point. But everything I learned was off YouTube, and I'm a massive fan of it now, because it, you know, you put anything about building an extension or whatever, it just teaches you how to put up uprights, like you can see then, and the plasterboard on top. And I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, maybe next slide, Jackie, and it'll show you it coming on a bit. So that's where really the first few sections of the railway had come in by this point. If we go to the next one, Jackie. Yeah, so this is in the probably the end stages, I think, of spraying all that paint. It was looking a lot better after this, and then I installed strip lighting, electrics, and I should tell you now, nothing complies with any health and safety directives at all, but it all works. I'm only joking, actually. I did get somebody to come and check it wasn't all going to explode in a ball of flame, so it does all work. And it really looks great now, because the best thing about it is, because it's underground, the temperature, of which we all know is really important in model railways, the temperature is the same constantly, kind of within it's usually about 11 or 12 degrees all the time, come summer or winter. So it's really good for the layout. So next slide, Jackie. So the baseboards, now these were, if you can see the middle section, I'll just try and explain this, because it's well, I still find it quite interesting. I mentioned before about the gradient. The only way we could find to do the gradient was to have the if you like, the cradle, which is the outer section of that baseboard you're looking at now, made separately to the cradle which sits in the middle of it. Sorry, I forgot what we called it now, but that flat section where the track goes sits in the middle. Now that's actually adjustable, so you can move it up by screws underneath, which then replicated I think it was, from memory, it was about 5 millimeters upward gradient on every one of those sections, of which there was about 70 down the scenic side. 60 or 70, can't remember. So it was it was quite a logistical exercise in itself, because the first load of track that actually got built wasn't built by me. It was built by a chap called Norman Saunders, who some of you might have heard of. He's based down in Swindon. And White Rose Baseboards up in Bedale, North Yorkshire, built the baseboard. So it was a case of Norman building the track onto the flat section of the baseboard, you can see, him sending it up to White Rose, who then inserted it in the middle, and then of course it all came together, and then it would come to me. I'd go and hire a van, take down 3 or 4 sections at a time, get them into the basement, and then start working on the scenery either side of the track. So Norman did probably about 40 foot of track before I just decided, you know, I'd kind of learned enough. So I took over the track building myself then. But I should say that the one important lesson that I learned was, before this project, I really, really wanted it to all be consistent in terms of quality of the scenery. So one of the things that I did was I practiced for probably 6-7 months, again, just in an evening, couple of hours an evening, mixing all, especially the static grass, which is of different lengths and different consistencies and different colors. And I wanted to get this winter kind of grass, which we'll come on to a bit later. But the only way of doing that was to mix it all together and experiment to get the right combination to reflect that color of winter grass that we're also used to seeing on embankments. And so I practiced again for, as I've just said, a few months. When I got the formula spot on, that's when I started the scenery, only when I got that right. Because what I wanted to avoid was the first bits of scenery being not so good and the last bits being much better. And it was a case of I just wanted it to be consistent. So maybe on the next slide, Jackie, you can see here, that's the track that Norman Saunders built, which is really superb. It's hand-built track, just with some of them with the Pico components sleepers threaded on, the concrete sleepers, and there is a gradient. You can't see that photo, doesn't show it, but there is a gradient of about 5 millimeters per board. So if we go on to the next one. So that's just an underneath of the electrics. At this point, White Rose were doing the electrics as well. And the chap who actually did the electrics on White Rose, certainly the scenic side, used to be an RAF electrician and worked rewiring Vulcan bombers and these Cold War jets. And you can tell he's from the RAF, because if you look at the wiring, it's absolutely meticulous. If you look at the other side that I did, it looks like somebody's lobbed a grenade underneath. It's just nowhere near as good. But that is, you know, there's not one spare bit of wiring, but I guess that's the RAF for you. So next slide. So here there's a bit more going on here. We're probably about 1.5 years into the build, possibly a little bit less than that. This is the point at which I'd taken over doing the track for myself, because I just needed to reduce the cost of everything. It was really onerous, the cost of everything, as you can imagine. And mind you, having said that, I was saying to Jackie the other day just how much more it would cost now because of the price of wood. It's just gone through the roof, as we all know. But here, each of these sections of board was in the region of about £450. And White Rose were superb at the time in, you know, in bringing these in on time and putting everything together, so I could just basically pick these boards up from White Rose in Bedale, take them on the trailer, get them down into the basement, and then fix them together and then get cracking with the scenery. So as you can see, either side of the rails is where, on the right hand side is where the embankments go. The middle is where I'm just about to build a road, and to the left hand side you can see another embankment which actually became a cutting. So if we go on a bit, Jackie. The fiddle yard. Oh, I hated every minute of building this fiddle yard, I've got to be honest. And the reason I did was simply because I love scenery. Everybody in this hobby, we like different things. Some people like electric, some people like doing track work. Some people like scenery. I like the scenery. I'm not brilliant at track work. And so, as you can imagine, with no scenery and all that track, which I think nearly put Pico out of production for about a month. I'm not kidding, actually, because they kept ringing me up and saying, how much more do you want of it? Because we're running out of stock. But so there was quite a lot, and yeah, you can see hand-built track in the middle. Back to the fiddle yard again. That's just Pico track, Pico points, and the fiddle yard, as I said, was a bit of a nightmare to build. We're going to come on to that later because there's quite a lot of things happening with the fiddle yard at the minute. So if we go on to the next slide, Jackie. This is just where I'm building. I can't remember what I'm building there. Oh yeah, that's the base for the cottages. So I was just trying to find a way of yeah, it looks a bit haphazard, doesn't it? But I was just working out with different layers of card and wood, etc., how to put a building on there which would not fall off when you put it in the back of an articulated truck. So we've got to, just before you go on to the next slide, you might see that plastic between the two baseboards. That's actually for when you're ballasting the track. As you can probably imagine, what you don't want is to go over the gap, because when you pull the gap apart, it rips all the ballast to shreds. So what I found was just slipping a bit of plastic, that's from Hellion Loco boxes, and it just slides down the middle, and obviously you don't get that problem because the ballast sets either side. You pull it out and then you've got perfect gap and a gap as well where the baseboards split easily without sticking together. So maybe the next slide, Jackie. Yeah, a bit more of that. Just the cottage is actually in place now. The cottages actually still exist today, and although they've been compulsory purchased by Network Rail, because some of you might know they're building the Transpennine electrics, they're putting the wires up at the minute. So the cottage, unfortunately, is getting demolished. I think it was built in 1899 by the Lancashire and Yorkshire. No, sorry, the London North Western. So it's in a typical style. It's a shame, but it's being knocked down. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, the cottages again. Do you know what? I've just realised that, and I should say from the outset, I didn't build that cottage, and I've forgotten who it was. He's probably watching now, so I'll mount up in apologies that long ago. One thing I should say about buildings is some of you may remember and have heard of Alan Downs. Alan became a really good friend of mine. He, as probably most will know, he died probably about 5-6 years ago. But Alan was a really good mentor, and he was probably one of the few people that really encouraged me all the time. And I got to know him as a child going to exhibitions, actually, but then met up with him just 2 or 3 years before he died and became really good friends with him and his wife, Sylvia. And as I've just said, they gave me a massive amount of help and encouragement. Alan built some of the civil engineering structures on the layout, the bridges that we'll come to in a minute. But what I didn't like about Alan's buildings, it's like criticizing the Pope, isn't it? But I just didn't like the way he finished the stonework, because it was much more Cotswolds than it was Yorkshire. So just very, very quickly, when I got his civil engineering structures from him, I used to roll on a very thin layer of Das clay and scribe this Yorkshire stone into the clay. Glue it onto the front of his structures, and then paint it in basically Yorkshire stone colours. Well, when Alan got to find out about this, he went absolutely crazy, and he had a bit of a temper, did Alan. And when he got over it, when I used to ring him, he used to answer the phone, and when he knew it was me, he'd shout to Sylvia, his wife, "Sylvia, it's Simon the effing Vandal on the phone," which went down well at the time, but he really was a great guy. And so I became known as the effing Vandal to Alan Downs after that, and that's all he ever called me after that day. But great guy was, not politically correct, but a real inspiration to me. And many of you might remember his all these articles he used to do in the 70s in Model Railway Constructor, I think he used to do, and a lot in Railway Modeler. But anyway, let's move on. Next slide. Oh, goodness me. So I'll give a prize to who can guess what that is. That's actually the concrete trunking, which runs there's 800 foot of it that runs over. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. There's four lines of concrete trunking, each one 55 meters long. And the only way to get the concrete trunking, which, as we all know, the signal cables go underneath there, to get it right is to glue it down in a random fashion. And I didn't want to buy it off the shelf and just have long straight bits of concrete trunking, so I bought it from Hatton's. I think I cleaned them out of evergreen channel, 7.8 millimeters. It's ingrained in my brain now. Wide, what became concrete trunking, and it's dead easy to build because you just snip it up with scissors. You simply spray it with primer, and then just as the primer's drying, you sprinkle on talcum powder, and it gives it that concrete gritty surface. And I just found that out by chance. But it works an absolute dream, and then it's just a case of gluing every single individual section down with super glue, which you would not believe how mind-numbing it was. But it does give you that effect of the really random concrete trunking that we've all seen, with the lids missing and everything else. In fact, in the end, what I used to do, because inside the concrete trunking is 3 wires made to represent, it's just layout wire, and it's just there to represent the signal cabling. But in the end, I just ran signal cabling, all the wires all the way down underneath the concrete trunking, and just missed the odd one off. So there's actually wires all the way down each side, just like signal cables on the layout, and it doesn't do anything at all, but it does look prototypical when something breaks off, or a lid or whatever, and you can see the cables underneath. So there we go. So let's go on to the next slide. So we're getting near now. So we're looking from the fiddle yard down to the curve which joins the fiddle yard with the scenic side, which is on your left out the picture. And this, I mentioned before about the gradient. This is what became a real nightmare, because we had to find a way of getting the fiddle yard, the height of the fiddle yard, the track, to join with the scenic side, which was a little bit higher at that end, but at the other end it was a good 40 centimeters. And that gave us problems with the gradient. Obviously, I wanted to run really long freight trains, so it gave me problems with the gradient. It gave me problems with the tightness of the corner and the curvature of the curves. But in the end, we just about cracked it. And I think you can still pull 40 HAAs or 40 MGR wagons up the gradients at either end. So it worked out okay in the end, but it really caused a lot of problems, and probably cost a lot of money to get the intricate complexity, if you like, of the gradient built into the layout. So if anybody asks me again, I would just make it one level, but I guess it adds to the realism. So let's go on to the next one. Yeah, so we're getting the curve, which again, if you're really eagle-eyed, you'll be able to see that those boards actually vary in thickness. Instead of taking the easy way out, which would have been to increase the height of the trestles or the legs underneath, what Dave did at White Rose was to make the boards thicker and thinner. So actually it's quite a thick board, the first one in the picture in the foreground, but they get thinner and thinner. So the trestles are all at the same height, and it's the actual baseboards, or the baseboards which increase in thickness, which provide the height. At the other end, Tim Horn, who then came in later on, made it much easier by just simply increasing the trestle height as the boards go around. But yeah, just a complicated way to do it, but there you go. So we'll go on to the next slide. Yeah, so this is the infill, if you like, and I just decided to use polystyrene, just cut with a polystyrene hot knife. And yeah, I went through a lot of hot knives, but it worked really, really well for me, because, as you know, it's light, it's dead easy to transport. At the time, it was really cheap. It's much more expensive now. And into the sections, I lowered pieces of polystyrene, cut it with a hot knife to fit, and then just used gaffer tape, as you can see, just to secure it in place while the glue took to it to actually give it a more permanent fix. So that was really the base. That's the base of most of the layout scenery, to be honest. I'll go to the next slide. Yeah, we're coming on a bit there. The fiddle yard to your right is already down. A lot of the scenery is done in the background, but we've just got to the end boards, and there's a big gap, as you can see, probably 5 or 6 foot into that picture, which is the river, which we'll come on to a minute, which Alan Downs built me 2 massive river bridges, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, next slide. And those are the said river bridges. Again, I think they've got Alan's Cotswold stone on before I vandalized it. So yeah, river bridges, that actual girder one is disused, and it was built, I think, by the was it the London North Western built it? I think it, I can't remember if it was Lancashire or Yorkshire, but anyway, it was built back into the 1890s, and it was taken out of use in the 1960s. But the viaduct, which is the other side, which you'll see in a minute, is still in use as it is on the layout. So we'll go on to the next bit. Yeah, another bit of the track bed really, and how the frames kind of came together. Tim Horn from Tim Horn Baseboard, some of you will know him. He's absolutely fantastic guy and has just been a tremendous help to me. He really has. If he's watching, which he probably isn't, thanks anyway. But he's been brilliant, and he built this section in its entirety in terms of the frames. And it was I knew the curvature and the land, how the land lied, so I had to get Tim to really copy the photos that I'd taken to actually get that landfall and make it a cutting or an embankment or whatever. So you can see where the polystyrene sheets had actually slip into between each one of those sections. So we'll go on to the next one. So there, yeah, so that's the, as we know, the dive under. Some of you have seen Heaton Lodge, you've probably seen how the trains go underneath, just like the real thing, which is, this was quite difficult to plan, and also difficult because you couldn't get to the trains apart from underneath. I have drilled a couple of holes in the top, but if you get a derailment under there, which is very rare, but of course it always does happen in the worst place, then yeah, it's quite difficult to get your hands on it. Apart from anything else, it's always embarrassing, isn't it? But yeah, so there we are. Next slide, please, Jackie. Oh, I think that's a repeat of the first one. That just shows how this is just detail, if you like. So when I was a kid and I used to go down to the dive under, which you've just seen, there used to be a little Fogman's hut there, and it was full of, dare I say, porn magazines and papers and everything. So I thought I'd just download some papers, newspapers, of course, from the internet, and miniaturize them and put them inside, which is exactly how I used to find it when me and my mates used to go playing around there. So that's just a little Fogman's hut, which I think is still there, actually. Go on to the next slide. Oh, this is another nightmare. This was the ferns, or the bracken ferns, which some of you might see on the real Heaton Lodge, that they cover probably a good 40-50 foot the real location. But I could not find a way to make bracken ferns. So in the end, I had to get a company to make them out of etched brass and sheets. If you go on to the next slide, Jack, I think it shows the sheets. Yeah, there we go. So each one of these had to be cut out. I actually ended up painting them first, then cut them out, and then plugged them into plaster, which you can see is the white underneath the ferns themselves on the embankments. And this took, I think this was 3 weeks to actually do 5,000 of those leaves. But and then it was just a case of bending over the tops of the ferns, because if you look at bracken ferns in the winter especially, obviously they're dead, so all the tops kind of bent over. So it was just a case of doing that and painting them a rusty, horrible brown colour. And yeah, but I'm really pleased with the effect. It's really worked out well, but nearly drove me insane. But there you go. Right, we'll go on to the next one. So yeah, things are coming on here. We can see. We're going to the next one again. This was one of the bridges that I built. One of Alan Downs' that I vandalised. So it was just, this is just built out of plywood that Alan built. I added the girders and the just overlaid it, as I said earlier, with DAS clay straight onto PVA glue, very thin 2mm DAS clay layer, and then just scribed it with the end of a screwdriver. It was just really difficult getting that magnolia look of the stone, the limestone. I think they're built out of Yorkshire limestone, and the variations in the different shades was really difficult to do. But I don't think I've really got there, but it's not far off. And as Richard pointed out earlier, there's a little Tesco carrier bag down at the bottom. I don't know why, but they stick in my mind. I remember seeing them blowing around, and the Tesco, even the emblem on the Tesco carrier bag supermarket emblem is as it was in 1983. So it's the old emblem. I found it on the internet, would you believe, and just downloaded it and then miniaturized it, because there's a few of them dotted around. It always makes people smile. So yeah, that bridge is still there actually to this day. We'll go on to the next slide, Jackie. Oh, so I decided in my wisdom I'd make the jack arches underneath the bridge as well, because although you couldn't see it, I wanted to know that they were there. So I took some pictures of the underside of the bridge, and it's actually really easy to make those. Just brick. I did use plastic, Slater's plastic brick, brick sheets. That's it, and just bits of brass in the middle, as you can see. And although you can't see it, it kind of gives me a pleasure just knowing that they're there, if you like. So next slide. The grass. Well, the grass, I should say at this point that my scenic modelling all began with Gordon Gravitt's book. I think it's called Landscape and Scenic Modelling, which is a pretty apt title, but it really was my Bible, and I used to go back to it again and again and again. And I used Gordon Gravitt's technique to make the roads. I kind of elaborated on a bit because a lot of Gordon's scenery is in the summer. Mine was in the winter, so I really wanted to give all the roads a really derelict appearance. And that was actually just a cart track, actually, that you're looking at now. But the grass as well was also from Gordon's book, and from Giles, who may or may not be on here from on the internet. I think I nicked some of his techniques as well. And the grass is dead simple, it really is, but there's one magic ingredient which makes static grass stand out a mile, and that is ground up earth. So it's just a case of buying, you can actually buy it from Tremendous, the scenery company. If you Google that, Tremendous, they do silt. I think it's earth silt it's called. And you can either use that, or you can grind up your own earth from the garden, put it in the not a microwave, in a cooker, not for too long, just till it's dry, and then smash it up with a rolling pin. If you put it through a sieve, and then you put the static grass down onto just standard PVA glue, sprinkle with a sieve the earth on top of the grass, it gives this fantastic matte appearance, which instantly looks realistic and makes the grass, it just dulls it down, as you can see it. It gives you brown patches where, which is exactly what you see on the real thing. So again, this was just elaborating on ideas that I'd got from other people. So we're going again, Jackie. Yeah, you can see here I'm doing an embankment. Now this embankment, again, what I wanted to replicate was the tufts of grass that you get on row embankments, because row embankments, if you look at them, they're never smooth, they're never like a mown lawn, they're always complete, they're always a mess with God knows how many different types of plants. But what I did want to do is get that undulation and the tufts. So what I bought was a bag of pebbles from B&Q, and as the layer of plaster was drying, I just pressed the pebbles in, and then covered the lot with PVA glue, and then started, as you can see, doing laying the static grass on there, and 2 or 3 layers of static grass, and it really looked the part, especially with the aforementioned earth sprinkled on top too. Should say too that with the static grass, I just use PVA to let the static grass go on top, and then to get 2 or 3 other layers, I just spray matte varnish. You can spray as much as you want on top of the grass, and then just use that as kind of a glue, just a basic matte varnish can from B&Q, and then put static grass on top of that, and then on top of that, and it just gives it much more depth. Right, if we're going to the next one then, Jackie. So leaves. So because I was modeling the row in winter, I needed a way of making dead leaves, and goodness knows, I tried so many different techniques for dead leaves. One day I was walking the dog, and I found, well, I saw all the dead leaves blowing about because it was autumn. So I picked some up, put some in a polythene bag, took them home and stuck them through a coffee grinder. And if you keep doing that, after about 20 or 30 seconds, you get basically a fine powder, which is the same color as dead leaves, because that's what it is. And it's just a case of sprinkling them on the wherever you want them to go. And it works an absolute
dream. Just sent me it 45 minutes into
it. Next one. Yeah, so this is hold my hands up. This is not my work. This is Norman Saunders' work. He took a lot of time and trouble. I must admit, when I look back, I used to get a bit impatient with Norman, because he seemed to take months to build anything. But it was entirely my fault, not his, because the workmanship they've gone into building those points is superb. And some of you might notice it's even got the 2066 number on the left-hand side, which is actually on the real thing. I think it's actually still on there today on the concrete sleepers as they are now. And I also didn't know what those yellow marks were, but I used to put them on loads of sleepers because I used to see them on the real thing. But apparently they mean that the permanent weighmen had earmarked them for replacement. The point motors, the real point motors, which are replicated by those plastic boxes there. Would you believe it? Norman even got I think he got the blueprints from Siemens, which Siemens now. It used to be Westinghouse. And so he could get the exact point motors as well, would you believe? So I added the little wires, which are what's called track circuit detectors, which some of you'll know. But Norman did the majority of the groundwork on those, and they really look the part. We'll go on to the next one. Yeah, a bit more of scenery with a skim of plaster, the old pebbles in a bowl, pressing them in before you put the static grass on. Really is important. It makes a huge difference. We'll go on to the next one, Jackie. Roads. Well, again, this is Gordon Gravitt's book. I nicked a lot of his tips, and one of the things that I really found useful was the way that he built the roads. This is just a tarmac kind of B road, and it's just, you use a particular type of grey, and I've forgotten what it is. It's just pale grey, and it's simply paint it on, and it's gloss pale grey, would you believe, which you wouldn't actually think you'd use gloss paint. But I used gloss pale grey paint, painted it on just card. You've got to get the camber in first, there's a picture of that in a second. But once you've got the camber of the road, paint on pale grey paint, and then drop loads of talcum powder on top. The talcum powder gives it that stippled effect, which looks marvellous in double O gauge, O gauge, any gauge really. Yeah, we'll go on to the next slide. Yeah, here we are again, just doing. That's the first signal gantry, which was built by Absolute Aspects. Some of you may have heard of, that makes some fantastic signals. And Matt, who runs it, bless him, I asked him if he'd make me a signal gantry, and I don't think he had any idea of what it entailed, because I think he spent probably 4 times as long as what he could charge me, bless him. So thanks again, Matt, if you're watching. But he made a really fantastic rendition of 2 gantries that are on Heaton Lodge. And I should say as well, I'm sure they're not watching, but there was a Network Rail gang when I was trying to get measurements for this gantry back in, it will have been about 2015. And I was debating about going on the railway and trespassing so I could get these measurements. But in fact, I decided I better not. But the next week, there was a gang working on the points. So I hailed them and just said, look, is any chance? I told them what I was doing, and bless them, they took my tape measure and my pen and paper and gave me all the measurements, all the dimensions of those gantries, which I was able to give to Matt, and he made some fantastic replicas of them, which is what you see there. So next slide. The river. Again, this is just casting resin with a little bit of green and brown paint. You only need a few drops of it. But again, the bridge just made with a just Das clay scribed. And that's exactly as I remember it. I used to come home as a 13-year-old child covered in mud because I used to play down there and jump my bike over that oil barrel and that pallet on top of it. But yeah, great days. So going to the next one. Oh, more of Norman's handiwork, yeah. Again, we'll go on to the next one. So I did, should I say, most of the work I did in the basement, I did on my own. But the one thing that I couldn't do was lift these huge boards. So I invested in a hydraulic platform, which is just, you just pump it up with your foot. But it was fantastic. It just enabled me to work underneath them, lift everything up, lower it down onto those temporary trestles, push them together, snap the locks together, and then move on to the next one. So it was an absolute godsend. So yeah, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, so you can see the track bed taking place. In fact, it's quite a good picture, that, because you can see the those steel columns that run down at the bottom of the, you'll see that one catch, and then you see those circular columns. They're what is adjusted to get the track bed to give the gradient. And you can't, maybe you can just tell, the gradient is going upwards from the picture backwards, is going up. And in fact, at one end of the layout, The far end of the layout is 35 centimetres higher than the other end, which is an imperceptible amount when you're talking 200 feet. But you can really tell with some locos just how they struggle to pull a long freight train up there, and then others had no problem at all. So yeah, go on to the next one. Yeah, I was just doing a bit of forestry commission here. So I was just making a little forest. Some of these trees I built myself, and they're built out of brass wire. Other ones, I got really good friends with Ant, who's a chap who runs Tremendous. Some of you have seen him at exhibitions, and he makes superb trees. They're not cheap, but they're really, really good. And yeah, these are some of his and mine, and some of his. The stone walls actually come from 10 Commandments, which again, some of you will have seen, and they're just painted with a wash of black paint, and they look superb. They really do look well. So yeah, bit of static grass mullein and the old dead leaves there as well. So we'll go on to the next one. That was a little a hut again that was on the real thing. I'd taken some pictures actually. It was one of some of the few pictures I took was of that hut when I was 13 or 14. I don't know why. But you can see where the rebars are to give the concrete some strength, and because I've got pictures of it, that's what I did. I just dug it out with a, I think that's an Intentio kit actually. So, right, next one. This is one of Alan Downes's buildings. This is one I didn't vandalise actually. He'd already vandalised it himself by the look of it, but it actually is really, really superb rendition of a mill that used to be near the sewage works, which we'll come on to a minute. And Alan built most of this. I just detailed it and just incorporated it into the layout. But he used to use all sorts of strange, weird, and wonderful things to get the tanks, and God knows anything. He used to use loads of stuff from Pets at Home and God knows what else. But he certainly did a good job because it really looks the part. Right, we'll go on to the next one again. Yeah, that's a picture from actually Andy York from BRM magazine. It's just one of my favourites, and it just shows that gantry, which I think I just weathered by then, because it was just absolute aspects. Matt did a fantastic picture of that. I never really got to find out what all the gravel was on the bank there, but again, it was there, so I just modelled it. I think there must have been some civil engineering structure there which they pulled up and then put the gravel down, and that's just a Hellion class 40, just a straight out of the box Hellion 40 with a bit of weathering on it. We'll come on to Elgin in a minute, but let's move on. Fiddler Yard again, yeah, my nemesis. Couldn't stand it, but it's turned out to be what is really going to be a completely new part of the layout, which we'll come on to soon. But yeah, that's the Fiddler Yard, and its last stages have been constructed. Yeah, and then again, the curve, that's actually going to be, again, part of the what I've just mentioned about where the railway is going to go in future. That's the station area. So there's going to be a fictitious station based on just standard Lancashire and Lancashire, get my words out. Lancashire and Yorkshire station. So that's going to be there. So we'll go on to the next one. Again, the Fiddler Yard. Yeah, nightmare. I think there's about 70 or 80 point motors underneath. I think there's about 80 point motors underneath there. They're all Cobalts from DCC Concepts. I had a few bit of trouble with the early ones, to be fair, but they were all very good there. Changed them and they've worked faultlessly ever since. So yeah, quite a lot of point motors, and as everybody hates wiring point motors up, and yeah, I'm definitely no exception to that. So we'll go on to the next one. Yeah, this is again Allen's River Bridge that I'm rolling a bit of DAS clay on top of. So I just use a little mini sander to get the bricks and the stonework to jut out, because I didn't want a smooth kind of finish. I just wanted the bricks to jut out, and all I did with that was the smooth DAS clay. I just, would you believe it, just got little bits of rolled up clay, tiny bits the size of a pinhead really sometimes, and just glued them onto each brick. I must have been crazy looking back at it. I think I was actually, in some sort of zone when I was building this, because somebody asked me the other day, and I actually can't remember. There's probably months that I can't even remember building half of this railway, because I think I was just completely concentrating on what I was doing. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, so there's a bit, just using the mini sander to scribe the stonework there. Go on again. Bit more static grass. That's the first layer of static grass coming out of a static grass machine made by a German company, which is actually brilliant. I've forgotten what it's called now. Some of you guys will know. But it's brilliant. The only trouble is you end up with grass everywhere in your hair, up your nose, and everywhere else. We'll go on to the next one. Yeah, the river again. So the river bridge, as you can all see, is in place. I used cork for the base, and the one thing about pouring that, yeah, that's it. The one thing about pouring the resin down is you must not have any gaps whatsoever. I'm sure a lot of you already know that, but you have one gap and you can guarantee you're going to get a massive pool of it on the floor. And I think the resin for that river cost about £500, so I did not want to get any gaps in there. So I went around it with silicone time and time again to make sure it was all completely watertight before I tipped it all in. Right, we'll go on to the next one. That's the dive under, but that's the real thing. And that's really what I wanted to capture. Just you can see all that old graffiti, and I just love that picture. I don't know what it is about it. It just has so much atmosphere, just with, you know, a single railway tunnel, because the other one's disused by now. But back when in the 80s, when Heaton Lodge was in its prime, they were both being used. We'll go on to the next one. Yeah, so that's what we're building there. You can see that we've got we're there, and you can see how the plastic sheets as well, which works really well in separating the boards. I'm actually using Pico track here with the sleepers spaced and the concrete the concrete components one as well, where you buy the rails and separately and the concrete sleepers, and you just thread them on. Just wear gloves though, because you punch your fingers and thumbs. It's just yeah, loads of time. The one thing I did build in as well that I really wanted to capture was the camber of the rail as well, which you can probably see, and that's just built in. That's just built in with layers of card under one rail to give it that kind of curve as it disappears through the tunnel. Right, next one. So yeah, we've completely flipped here. We're on to this is much later, and this is when I got first batch of merry-go-round wagons from Dapol, which, as many of you will know, with the a lot of the trains, the MGR trains, when they were being unloaded at power stations, they used to be moved mechanically by machines which had tires on them, and they used to leave these rubber lines down the side of the not all of them, but a lot of the hoppers, and that's what I was trying to do there. So it's just about before I'm going to put the black rubber lines down the side, hence the masking tape. So we're going to the next one. Yeah, that's the kind of after one, just before they've had a layer of varnish. And then some of the, and before anybody asks, no, the numbers, I have just not had the patience to change all the numbers. So I cheat by just, I said to Richard earlier, I just spray a bit more paint over the numbers, which is completely unprototypical, but you can't do everything. So we're on to the next one. Yeah, it's a nice photo. That was Hornby magazine actually took that. I think it was Mike Wilde. Just of the only 31, I believe, which had its number in the head code. So that was one that a friend of mine, Lee Edmondson, actually did for me, which some of you will know. And the tanks are just like the real thing models, which I built about 30 of them, never again because they're so complicated. But at the time, there was nothing else available. So build them I had to. I'll go on to the next one. Oh yeah, that's the I decided in my wisdom I'd also fill them with real coal, which again was a big mistake. You can see the one behind actually has got the fake platform, fake platform, and the coal I just smashed up with a hammer, put it through a blender. I think I went through three or four blenders because it completely wrecked them, but not before I got a good polystyrene bag full of coal dust. But and I've been told many times that coal is actually, in the real thing, going to power stations, it was almost like dust. So it's very easy to get too lumpy coal. So you just have to keep putting it through that coffee grinder. Anyway, just don't mix it up with your real coffee. Next one, that resin. Yeah, so that's 2-part resin. I bought that online actually, and yeah, it's not cheap in that amount, as probably some of you will know. But you just mix it up. There was actually a bit of a funny episode. Hornby, the Hornby program, which some of you might see on TV, were filming when I was doing this. And I was getting a bit frantic because with lights and cameras and a crew there and everything, it's a bit nerve-wracking. And so I've mixed too much hardener in that mix. And so when I started pouring it on the river, there was clouds of steam. It just looked dreadful. It looked like there was a fire. And it was just simply because it was hardening too quickly. And under my breath, I swore, but I think they picked it up on the program as well. So it didn't go well. So I had to do it all again. So it was an expensive mistake. But there you go. So next one. Yeah, so the river's taking a bit of shape now. That's just a model of an upturned boat, as you can see. Can't remember where I bought that from. It's off the shelf. The ice, actually, I was just trying to get because it was winter, I was just trying to replicate some sheets of ice under the resin. Didn't quite come off, but you know, I did give it a good shot. But I was pleased with the colour of the water, which is just exactly like the real River Calder itself, which is not the cleanest of rivers. A lot better now, but it didn't used to be. So we'll go on to the next slide. Yeah, so that's a better photo. The bridge is looking pretty good now. You can see the reflection in the water. I'd like to have got a few more ripples, but I didn't quite manage that. But it just looks like a very still, calm day. So I'll go on again. Yeah, so these were the let's have a think. That was the fencing. I think that's by Buzz Models. And yeah, I bought that. Just made the wire fencing which surrounds the derelict sewerage farm or mill, if you like, which is right next to the river. And the puddles are just bits of resin. So yeah, next one. That's the banner repeater, which was made by, again, Matt at Absolute Aspects. I've got to give him credit for that. It works as well, although when the layout was at Harrogate a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't working, but it normally works. You can see though behind it the concrete fencing, which again is just slabs of plastic with brass wire down the middle to again mimic the rebars. And I've said it so many times, but when you make a prototypical model, it's so much easier because you can simply copy the real thing. It's just the trick is, as we all know, again, is to find out ways to do that. But at least it gives you you don't have to use your imagination, is what I'm trying to say, because it's all there for you. Let's go on a bit. Trees again, yeah, down by the dive under again. I used to play down there as a little boy. Swing on those branches on a tire. And we'll move on. Another one. Yeah, and it's coming together now. Is the dive underline, which again, keep saying it. I love that bit. The grate at the bottom of the drain pipes and things. Let's move on. And that's building the fence that I just mentioned, which again is just bits of plastic with the old trick with the talcum powder. If you ever use that, it's great. Again, it's just gloss paint. That's Precision Paint's concrete colour. Just paint it on, and before it dries, just sprinkle on talcum powder, and it dries like that. And to me, it just really gives it that gritty look. Let's go on again. Yeah, just scratch building a little gantry. I can't remember which gantry it was. I built a few. I quite like soldering. I don't know why, because everybody seems to hate it, but I seem to have taken to it. I quite enjoy soldering, but there you go. Right, next one. No, that's probably blender number 47 that I've gone through in making coal and God knows what else and grinding it all up. So yeah, next one. That's my coal making facility. It's like the equivalent of Eggborough Power Station. So I just smash all my coal up down there and then sieve it through the sieve. You can see there's different sieves with different size holes in, just until you get it down to that fine dust. In fact, it's quite interesting, but when I weighed the coal trains that get pulled, that's, as you know, an HUO, but the HAAs, of which most of the Elgin diesels pull probably 34, 36, I think the weight of the train's about 22 kilograms or something. That's obviously the dead weight. It's not what they pull when they're going on the straight. But so I just used super glue, very, very thin super glue to glue down the coal there. It's not ideal, but it does give off fumes as well. But it also does a really good job and just gives it a nice sheen as well, but like it's been raining on it. So let's fire on to the next one. My Mini. So the first thing I was pointed out at Wakefield that Minis apparently don't have coilover suspension. So yeah, I got that wrong. But anyway, the Mini is actually an old it's Corgi or Dinky, and I just completely massacred it, smashed all the windows, and the glass is actually, I was saying to Jackie earlier, it is from Laboratory Slides, which are really useful. You can get them online. So if you ever want to make broken glass, just buy Laboratory Slides in a little pack, break them up, and again, you just get scale, O gauge windows which you can smash up. So I just glued them in with the old canopy glue and a few wires hanging out the engine bay. And just the bricks are from, I think the bricks are from a military modeler's shop, and that's one good thing to mention actually, because there's loads and loads of techniques I used which do come straight from the military modelers, which again, they're real experts in the field, including that ice effect on the roof, which is by a company called Precision Ice and Snow. And they make a liquid which you can paint on, which dries and just looks exactly as it says on the tin, like ice. So yeah, so we'll move on. Yeah, the old Yorkshire Waterman. Just replacing a vandalized sign. I just thought I'd make a nice little cameo. I'm not into cameos really, but I just thought it'd provide a bit of entertainment. So there he is. We'll go on to the next one. That's a good indication of before and after of the static grass. Before you put the earth on it and after you put the earth on it, you can tell the one on the right is with the earth on it, or the silt that you get from Tree Menders, or you can grind your own up, as I said earlier. But on the left, it just doesn't look right to my eye. But on the right, it's transformed and it's simply ground up earth. And it just, I don't know, it just does something to that grass that makes it look so much better. Right, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, another picture of that, and with Alan Downs' mill in the background. Yeah, a bit of frost here. I decided to... The strange thing is, the ironic thing is the only photo of me at that location, the one you've seen, was in the summer. But what I actually remember was the winter. I just remember being freezing all the time when I went down there. And so that's actually a theatrical spray called Dirty Down, which you can buy online. If you ever want to give your layout a bit of a frosty look, then you can buy it. It's not actually white paint, which a lot of people have asked. It's simply a spray, which is much, much finer than that cheap Christmas tree spray. And yeah, it just coats the grass just nicely with it, not too much, because as we all know, if you overkill it, it can just look awful. But that's probably about as far as you want to go. Let's go on to the next one. So this was the sewerage works. Again, I just took some photos of the real thing. That's all made out of just brass, just soldered together. The lid is off, as Jackie pointed out, it's a paint lid. I thought it was a biscuit tin. I could have sworn it's biscuit tin, but no, it was a paint lid off some concrete paint that I was using to paint the floor. And that got filled with resin later on, but that just gives you an indication. It was almost exactly the right size. Somebody from Yorkshire Water was actually at the Harrogate exhibition, and they explained to me all about the different terminology used for all these walkways and things, which was fascinating. But let's go on to the next one. Yeah, so the sewerage farm is taking place. It's taking form rather. So yeah, apparently they always have a small, which is the silver one. That is a biscuit tin lid, and then there's usually 2 or 3 really big filter beds, as they're called. So yeah, next one. Yeah, taking shape again. That's the real thing, as we can see. So that's what I was trying to really replicate more than anything else. Yeah, so this was just another way of just getting that rough, rugged surface. And what I found when I was building roads was there's lots and lots of different materials you can use, which I basically built the roads just like the real thing in terms of with real roads, there's different layers of hardcore and whatnot. And that on top of there, I think was some sort of grit. Now, what was it that rabbits clean themselves in from Pets at Home? I've forgotten what it's called now, but it's something that you buy for rabbits at Pets at Home if you ever want to buy it, and you just basically sprinkle it on and yeah, just roll it with an old tin there, and it just gives it, when it's dried, it looks really good. Gives it that finish that you need. Next one. Yeah, so that's another bit with all sorts of different, paraphernalia rolled into it to make it look gritty and dirty, and a bit of resin in there as well to get that muddy effect with it being winter. Go on to another one. Yeah, same again. Just building the roads, and this is the sewerage works, which is now coming on leaps and bounds. One of the difficult things was actually finding the Yorkshire Water logo, which they used to use in the 1980s. They've changed it, but I could not find it. And Jonathan, who may or may not be watching this, he's a good friend and a colleague who built a lot of the automation for Heaton Lodge Junction, which we'll come on to in a sec. But he found the logo online and downloaded it, miniaturized it, and so I managed to get the right logo on it. Keep going. Yes, it's all coming together there, I think. That's probably about 80 foot, so we're almost halfway there, I think, on the scenic side anyway. So we'll go on again. Yeah, a bit more of the Allen's second mills. Actually, two mills, one there, one on the other side of the river. Both derelicts. They've both been pulled down now, but they were there at the time. Let's go next one. So there's the Yorkshire Water logo. In fact, no, that's the new one, and that was the one that somebody pointed out in the wisdom that it was the wrong one. So ripped down it got. Next one. Yeah, a bit more of the static grass again. You can see that's before I've sprinkled the earth in, and that's after. So again, it just gives it that mucky kind of appearance that I was after. And the concrete track and the concrete trunking above it too. I never ever want to see any of that concrete trunking ever again, or at least lay it anyway. Next one. Yeah, brambles. I needed to really get to grips with brambles. There's loads of them around there, and there is on any railway, especially in the winter. You see them; they're all brown. So all that was postiche, I think it goes by the name of, or basically doll's hair. Green scene cellar, you can get it from most, and it's just basically doll's hair. You pull apart. I don't use what's the other thing that people use now? I can't remember now. Horsehair. I don't use that because I think it's a bit too coarse. But for me, that came out really well, and it's just basically postiche pulled apart, spray it with matte varnish, and sprinkle on the aforementioned dried leaves, which I've ground down even more through a coffee grinder to almost like a powder, and it gives you that brown, which is exactly the right color. Let's go on again. Yeah, a bit more of the old brambles, which came out really well. Next one. Yeah, that's again a close-up of the leaves, which have now ended up being almost powder. So on again. That's the postiche when it's just been sprayed with matte varnish before it gets the sprinkling treatment of the dead leaves. And it doesn't matter. Lots of people say, how much varnish do you spray on? Just cover it. Doesn't matter. It's all going to be covered up. The varnish soaks up the leaves anyway. So, but that stuff is really good, that postiche, for giving you, again, I got that tip from Gordon Gravitt's book, and it was just a really good way of lifting the ground cover, just to give you that depth. Move on. Yeah, same again, a bit more the wall, and the that shape of van actually is from some of you might recognize it. It's actually from the what is it, the Dinky series, or is it Corgi? It's from the 007 Spy Who Loved Me film. It's still got the dent in the bonnet where George jumps off the roof onto the bonnet. You might remember seeing that with Barbara Bach and Roger Moore. So that's the Spy Who Loved Me van, and all I did was just pull it apart, stick the Yorkshire Water logo on, cover it with ice, and yeah, there you go, and put some number plates on it, and it works really well, I think. Apart from the dent in the bonnet, that could have been anybody. Let's go on. Yeah, that's a nice little diorama of the Allen's Mill again. We'll move on again. Yeah, we'll jump backwards a little bit. So we're back now again with the river and I should mention actually now, that board you can see on the right hand side, the one thing that I've really that's really worked for me is building sceneries on trolleys, and what I've really taken to it. So if you want to extend your layout and not have a permanent extension, if you like, what I do is I just buy I buy the components, which is just aluminium brass tubing, aluminium square tubing, and then you can buy these little connectors, and you can make your own trolley at whatever height you want with little casters. Then you can put a board on top, you can build your scenery on it, and forgive the pun, you can buffer it up next to your permanent scenery, and it just gives everybody the impression it's permanent, but it's not. That's again the roads as the paint is drying and the talcum powder has been sprinkled on, so that kind of gives it again that gritty appearance of tarmac. Let's move on a bit. Yeah, that's before the talcum powder, but after the, and you can just see the where the camber is, which is just a strip of yeah, that's it, just the strip underneath. And if you're building roads, it really doesn't take a lot of effort just to build that camber in. It's just simply a bit of plastic which you run all the way down the inside, very thin card, glue down the edges, and then you get that camber. Yeah, you can see it much better there. But it really does give a great impression, because roads without a camber, there's just something missing when you look at them. But when you see one with camber, you'll realise. And again, that's old Gordon Gravit's tip. Let's move on. Yeah, another one of the old mill again. That's an old Capri. I used to learn to drive. I learned to drive in a Capri, so I thought one has to be included. So it's a Helgen 40 in the other side. But yeah, the actual ice on the windscreen is just done by a couple of drops of super glue inside the car. Screw the body back on, and the fumes from the glue make the windscreen just the fumes make it look like that, which to me looks pretty much like a frosty windscreen, which is just what I wanted to do. There's also grates in the road, which again etched brass, and I've forgotten who makes them now. You can get them all over the place, but it's a really good thing just to cut little sections in the, that's right, and just drop those grates in and paint them metallic, and it really adds to the realism. And you can also see on the right the different fences. As again at Eaton Lodge, there was walls, there was different bits of fence, there was concrete fencing, there was wooden fencing, there was all manner of fencing, and so they all got mixed up. But again, it's another example of, I would never have thought to do that. I'd have not really had photos, thanks to Flickr, of the real thing, of all the, the ones that you can find of any real location. You can find anything on there. So I'll move on again. Yeah, it's just a bit more of the grass and that's the what's it called now? The Bushes seafoam. So that's just seafoam with a bit of sprayed with matte varnish, and again the bramble mixture just sprinkled onto it. So the fences are by Slaters, and the wall is 10 Commandments. But yeah, that looks just quite a nice photo, that. Next one. Yeah, that's spraying God knows how many, well, not thousands, but certainly hundreds of fences. And I used to get them from Slaters and just completely, well, just using Alan Downs' term, vandalise them again, just cut bits out of them, because you never see fences that are in great condition. So that was just before they got primed and painted. We'll go on again. Yeah, just another example with the walls and the fences. Same picture again. Move on a bit. Yeah, just gouging out that's it, painting the roads, which again is just the pale grey paint by can't remember, is it Humbrol? Can't remember now. But yeah, and then just sprinkle talcum powder on top to give you tarmac. You can just see, yeah, that's the talcum powder there. I was going to say the puddles are also there, Now they're just, I might have mentioned before about the, in fact, I have mentioned before about the laboratory slides. Well, I used to put little slides, again, I'm not going to take credit for it, Gordon Gravett. He used to paint the slides green, put them under just cut a little hole in the card for the road, and then just basically colouring around it, use clay to blend it all in, and you get some fantastic puddles that way, or you can use the casting resin. Let's go on again. Yeah, so again, this is where the old trenches were dug out and everything, and the grass in the middle of the road, different coloured, different grates and whatnot. So again, just copied off the original, really. That's a better picture. That's just again of the, all you can see there from that join in the board in the river to the right is all trolleys. So everything there is just those aluminium trolleys, which the scenery's built on top of it. So dead easy. It's a pain in the backside to roll them up, but it's far easier than, I don't think I'd ever be able to move that amount of scenery. Yeah, so the trolleys really work for me. Let's go on a little bit more. Yeah, that's the static grass that I use, and it's from a company called Mini Nature, German company, and I combine it with Nock, the two together. But I ended up buying so much from direct from Mini Nature's website in Germany that I got a broken English email saying, would you like us to supply it in bin liners instead, because you seem to have had so much. So they ended up sending it through in huge bags after a while, and that was just the delivery from Germany. So all I did was mix those two together in a blender and just use, yeah, exactly. And that's the colour you got, which would suit me, and did suit me, because obviously I was modelling the layout in winter. Yeah, that's just a quick photo of the, because it doesn't matter what your scenery looks like underneath, it can look an absolute state, but it doesn't matter because it's going to get covered. Let's move on again. So we're moving on to logistics now. We're getting near the end anyway, but the way I found of moving the locos, and I've tried all sorts of things, I just came up with this idea. These are flight cases. I think they were about a couple £100 each, but I just found it a really good way of moving the locos, and those two sides snap together, and then it just pushes onto the back of a truck. So it works really well for the amount of rolling stock, because obviously I need to carry about 30 full-size or full-length trains. So I use quite a lot of the flight cases to pack everything in. It's a bit like a rock band, really, isn't it, when I come to think of it? But yeah, let's move on again. Yeah, so these are the trolleys. So I know so many people ask about how it gets moved. Well, I knew from the outset that this railway was going to have to be portable, because I couldn't build anything so large, even if I owned that building, which I don't, I lease it. But I could not build anything so large and just, completely smash it up when I needed to move it. So I always knew it was going to have to be portable. And the only way I could come up with was to have a metal fabrication company make me those trolleys, which I kind of designed, knowing the internal sizes of an articulated truck. Two of those will sit side by side. So I think they're about 4 foot 2 inches wide, and they've got double decks. So when you lift the top, the one with the bridge in this picture, when you lift that off, you've got a deck which you can then lift off to access the one underneath. And it works really well. So once they're out the basement, and getting them out of a basement is another story entirely. But once they're out of the basement, they simply roll onto a truck if it's got a tail lift, or a forklift. We're just able to get underneath it to lift it into the trucks. We'll go on to the next one. So this was the first outing, I think, to Wakefield. Some of you might have come along to that, and I think that's Tim Horn and Lee Edmondson in the background, who were helping at the time. And yeah, it was the first time the layout had been out, so I was absolutely terrified, to be honest, that everything would work. You might be able to see on the right-hand side, those are all the fiddle yard boards, which are stored vertically in slots in different trolleys. And the scenic ones are obviously stored on, or moved rather, on trolleys, which are a different design. But it all went in really, really well, and it all worked to a fashion. It was working in automatic at Wakefield, and we had a few problems, but yeah, it was good fun though. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, goodness me. Right, so you can see those doors are the lift doors into the basement. So my basement is below ground level. We're actually looking, the camera's actually on ground level, and we're looking at the basement level, which is about 2 meters, 3 meters difference. So the trick was, or the challenge I had, was to try and get all these sections out of there across that lift shaft, and which is disused, I should tell you. I should have said that at the beginning. So the lift hasn't been used in 40 years. It was a case of trying to find a way of getting those sections out, pull them up 3 meters and out so I could get them loaded into the truck. So I came up upon the idea of buying a cherry picker off eBay, wheeling it to the side, to the lip where you see there, bolting a crane, which was with 4 concrete bolts, one you can buy off eBay again, which just lifted a ton, like an engine crane, some of you might have seen, and then lowering this cherry picker into the lift shaft, again, completely ignoring any health and safety regulations. But then I had a metal fabricator come, the same one that built the trolleys, welded the platform you can see there on top of the cherry picker, so I kind of made myself a mini lift. And so the trolleys roll out of the door, which is shut at the minute, which is at basement level, onto the lift, press a button, lift goes up and out they come. But me and Jonathan and anybody else that helps at the time always have real panic attacks, because this cherry picker is just well past its best. And if it breaks down, there's absolutely no way you're going to get those carts out. So you can imagine, before taking the whole railway out, I'm always having sleepless nights, worrying if I can get the whole layout out. But anyway, there you go. It works, and there we go. Let's go. Anything else?
That's
Any
it.
questions? Yeah, I think we're just about at the end now. I just wanted to just mention, Jackie, if I could, about the future. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope I haven't bored people too much, but yeah. So basically, very quickly, the future Heaton Lodge is going to be on the Fiddler Yard side. So the idea is the scenic side is going to stay as it is, because that's very prototypical. The other side is going to be, because I've always been fascinated at how many people really enjoy going around to the Fiddler Yard side. So that's becoming, as some of you will know, that's going to become a marshalling yard, with fully signalled, but there's also going to be a power station there. So the power station is going to be built onto the trolleys that you've seen already, which are used to transport the layout. So there's going to be 3 times 3 meter high fiberglass cooling towers, which will sit on the trolleys on the inside of the Fiddler Yard, together with a big turbine building for a power station. But more to the point, there's going to be an MGR, or a merry-go-round train unloading facility. So trains will go through an unloading facility. It will work as well. So the coal will drop out of the hoppers, the DAPL hoppers, underneath, and then be taken away by conveyor to drop in a bucket. We'll refill them behind the scenes and then send it through again, which I think will just add a lot of play value. And I just want to say as well, losing my voice, sorry, been talking too much. I just want to say at this point that a lot of you will know that Hellion sponsor the layout, and that came about because Heaton Lodge is such a big layout. It's a really good showcase for them to use the prototype. For example, some of you might have seen the Class 58 was running around at Harrogate, and they've been fantastic, because there's just no way I could have afforded the amount of stock that layout takes. And Kim Nanastad and Ben Jones at Hellion have been fantastic in sponsoring the layout and providing stock, which I can use, or I can paint, or I can do what I want, make it look dirty, because without them it would have been really difficult to come up. I'd have had to borrow God knows how many people's stock, and I still do, but yeah, most of it has come from Hellion, so thanks to them for that. So yeah,
We've got a question here from Graham Clark in Duffield to everyone, just asking, what DCC control system do you use?
Yeah, I was going to mention the DCC because I didn't take any pictures of that. So basically, one of the biggest problems was the ampage, the sheer power you need to operate. Well, there's at least 15 locomotives idling in the motive power. What's going to be the motive power depot? And there's always 4 or 5 full length trains on the layout, so it's a good point. The layout operates at 10 amps, uses boosters. It's a Digitrax system with another company called DigiKeys, a Dutch make, which is integrated into the Digitrax, which does all the automation, because Heaton Lodge will work automatically until it goes wrong. But when it does go wrong, it's awful. But when it works great, it's brilliant. And it can also be run manually as well. So Jonathan, who works with me, came up with writing a software program, so I think which is Rockrail, which talks to Digitrax and talks to DigiKeys and basically makes the whole thing work together. So just to answer your question, it's Digitrax that powers the track, it's DigiKeys that does all the accessories, and there's Rockrail, which is a computer software system that kind of tells everything to do what it, it works anyway, and that's what it uses.
And Tim Stubbs has asked if you could say a bit more about the automatic control system.
Yeah, Jonathan's really a man to ask. If you ever see him at one of the outings that Heaton Lodge has, but it uses Rockrail, as I've just said. It works by having sensors underneath the track. So I think there's 2. So where the droppers are, as you'll know, when you're wiring a layout, you've got the droppers that hang down underneath. There's extra droppers, which are called sensors, and they basically feed the computer with information to tell the computer where the trains are. But it's quite difficult because the trains have to stop in particular spots, so they can restart again. The computer picks the trains at random to run them round. But what's difficult is some of the trains, as I've just said, are very long, some are very short, like a DMU. So you need that gradual deacceleration or acceleration, which is prototypical. So building that in, as well as the automation, is quite difficult to do. But yeah, I think it's worked really well though.
A question from Peter Broomhead, Simon. So thanks, Simon. Are there any plans to bring the layout down south?
Yeah, there is. I've got plenty of plans. The problem is, or has been for the last year, is the cost of everything, because as I mentioned earlier, it needs 3 articulated trucks to take it anywhere, which is the best part of 10,000 quid. So if I organise my own show, a bit like the Shepton Mallet one, I have to be fairly confident that I'm going to get the ticket sales to enable it all to work. But with the Harrogate show, that was organised by somebody else who paid enough to get the layout there. So basically, I'd love to bring it down south. There is plans, but it's just finding a venue which is big enough and one that's also not going to break the bank. And if you can find those 2, then I'd take it anyway. I'd even take it to Denmark, to be honest, or Germany. I think it'd be quite fun. So that's your answer.
Thank you.
And there's certainly compliments there from Pete Matcham about absolutely fabulous and incredible project, very inspiring, and thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks. It was, if I'm being completely candid, it was probably one of the most difficult things was working on your own for such a long time, because although you people joke about solitary confinement, it almost was that, because I was working down in the basement, especially during COVID. I'd be working 10, 12 hours a day, and you kind of overthink things, and then you just can't give a good analysis on what you're actually doing. So you end up overthinking everything, and everything goes basically haywire. So, and that's where I kind of realized that clubs really serve a purpose, because you can bounce off other people. And so I've tried in my old age to try and become a bit more sociable and integrate a bit more, because honestly, spending 3 years down there, just building that on your own, apart from the odd person coming in, but most of the time I was on my own. It did, it plays tricks on you for sure. So yeah.
A comment from Graham Clark. An incredible project. Look forward to the visit next month.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and sorry about that delay of a week, but yeah, I look forward to seeing everybody at Wakefield, and yeah, we should have a good time there. It should be fun.
That'll lead me on to just do a few final slides to let people know about that visit. And if anybody thinks of any questions while I'm just running through these last few slides, then please do continue to type them in and we'll pick them up in a moment. So just to do a formal thank you, please, to Simon. It is an incredible project, as everybody said. It's absolutely amazing to see it in its entirety. I saw it up at Harrogate. I'm really looking forward to seeing it on a more personal level next month and being able to ask lots of questions as you see it up close and personal, so to speak. But we really appreciate the time and all the effort going into pulling together all the photographs. It's really great to see something being built, and all the processes that you went through.
Yeah.
The people who want to visit next month, it was scheduled for the 23rd, and we've written to absolutely everybody who had booked, and we've sent an email out to all the members who we have email addresses for, and there is a news flash on the website as well and on the forum. Unfortunately, Simon's got to have a knee op, so the 23rd has had to be delayed by a week. So we're on schedule for Sunday, the 30th of April, which means it may be something you can do now if you couldn't attend on the 23rd. If you go to the front page of the website and just click onto events, so where you find events up in the actual main menu bar, the drop-down menu, visit Heaton Lodge, that will give you details about the visit. So say it's Sunday the 30th now. It literally costs £3, and that's covering the cost of the extra toilets and refreshments for the day. And bring your own lunch, and book the tickets. And it's open to guild members, but guild members can book tickets for friends and family as well. So if you've got friends who you want to bring along or family that you want to bring along, that's perfectly acceptable, and guild members can buy those tickets. So a maximum of 100 people, first come, first served. And obviously we're making sure the people who'd already booked for the 23rd get advance notice of transferring their tickets. The next An Evening With, you were talking there about automatic layout control and different ways of controlling layouts. Peter Reynolds, who is one of our videographers and does a lot of the YouTube channel, does a lot of work on electronics, and he's going to be talking about how to actually operate different operating systems for layouts, basically, that are affordable. And that's going to, hello, where have I gone? Go back a bit. That's going to increase the traditional DC, DCC, Bluetooth radio control. And he will have some guests with him who'll be talking about how they actually operate their layouts as well. You know, you've got people now operating with their telephones, doing things with Raspberry Pi. So a lot of interest in how many different ways you can operate a layout. That starts at 8 o'clock as usual on the 26th of April. As you know, booking opens at midnight tonight, so it's advertised for 1 month in advance, and you get your joining instructions and the Zoom link as soon as you register. So you'll find that on the front page of the website from midnight. The next big face-to-face show is our new Southern show, and I know a lot of members in the South have been asking for this for a very, very long time. we finally found a venue at Kempton Park, and we're actually using both floors of the main grandstand. There'll be lots of traders on the ground floor, and then layouts, demonstrations, societies and guild stands on the upper floor. And Simon's actually going to be there with realism redesigned as he was at Kettering. So if you think of any questions afterwards, I'm sure you can pop along, and if you can't get there on the 30th of April, then do still come with questions. More information how to book for that, click on the little advert there where it says more information on the front page of the website. That will take you to a page where you can book your advance tickets, and you can view the venue at the very bottom there where the arrow is. If you click on that link, we've got photographs of the venue. There's very, very good car parking, over 800 spaces, all free. It has its own railway station. It's not inside the low emission zone, so there's no reason for people to worry about that. And there's some nice hotels, the Premier Inn, the Travel Lodge. The Premier Inn has a very, very tight car park. I will warn people about that. But there's a Travel Lodge nearby and various bed and breakfasts and things, as you can imagine, because it's not a million miles from Heathrow. So if you can join us for the Southern show, we'll look forward to seeing you there. And don't forget, if you are booking advance tickets for our shows, L-Cut Creative are celebrating 10 years of producing modular laser cut kits, and they have kindly donated £100 vouchers. We had 2 drawn out of the hat at Kettering. Anybody who buys advance tickets for Kempton Park, again, there will be 2 numbers pulled out for 2 more £100 vouchers at Kempton, 2 at Barnsley, and then 4 vouchers for Guildex, 2 for the 1-day ticket people and 2 for the people who buy 2-day tickets. So a great opportunity just by buying your advance tickets to actually go into the free prize draw. And of course, it is £1 cheaper to buy online than it is to actually wait until you get to the door. We're also hoping at Kempton Park to have some ride-on railway outside. The local Model Engineering Club are keen to actually bring us some portable track, and I think it's 5-inch, but they may be bringing 7¼ It's just very early discussions at the moment. But very good disabled access. You can get upstairs in the lift. There's no problem with any of that, and all the usual facilities. We've obviously got some non-members with us. It's £2 for these evenings if you're a non-member, and we do 11 a year rather. So it's £22, and membership is only 28. So if you are enjoying the seminars, that's just one of the benefits of membership. You obviously get full access to the website, a chance to actually explore all the latest gazettes and guild news online, Gazette archives, going into the wiki, which is like the O-Gauge modelling encyclopedia, seeing all our trader listings, product directories, access to the YouTube channel, and all of the forthcoming events and forum of modelling topics. So if you do want to join us, please do. If you want a free 1-month trial of membership benefits, then that's available as well. And again, very easy to do. Just literally click on About Us on the front page of the website, drop down box, join online, and all you need to do is fill out the form. If you're doing the 1-month free trial membership, click that box. If you're joining as a full member, then obviously you'll get the full membership pack, and you'll start getting all of your paper copies of the Gazette as well. But we really do have an awful lot to offer members in terms of the knowledge and the sharing of skills, as well as all of the articles in the Gazette and information at events. And then don't forget, Barnsley is on the 3rd of June, a new venue close to the M1, hopefully more accessible for people. And then Guildex is our big 2-day convention in Stafford on the 2nd and 3rd of September. So lots more to look ahead of. And obviously this is just the third of our evening widths. We've got another 8 to go during this year, so lots of information to be shared. So thank you to everybody who's joined us. We're back again on the 26th of April at 8 o'clock, and obviously we're now in British summertime. So we'll just see if there's any more questions. Fabulous evening, and certainly well done, brilliant project. Good luck for the future and the expansions. Kempton Waterworks Museum, and Kempton Waterworks is down the road from Kempton Park. Good suggestion from somebody about what else is available down there. Obviously not far from Windsor and all sorts of other attractions as well in that area if people want to bring the family. And Kempton Waterworks Museum Railway, that is. Okay, thank you, Andrew Jones. Any other questions before we close the
Jackie,
evening?
there's the Kempton Waterworks, which has got the engines like Kew Bridge, and there's Kempton Waterworks Railway. I expect if you contact the Kempton Waterways people, they might be able to get the railway, because it doesn't open I'm not sure about the water, but the railway doesn't open all the time.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. I'll make contact.
I think it's got a website.
Excellent. Thank you. I will look.
I don't know if Richard Prior, some of the Festinian London area group people are involved with the Waterworks Railway, but I'm pretty certain it's got a website.
Excellent. Okay. Anybody got a burning question and wishes to unmute before we close the evening?
I'll just say one more thing if I can.
Can, of course.
Just very, very quickly. If there's one thing I learned about this project, it was never go home when you're trying to solve a problem, because there were so many times when I was building Heaton Lodge that I came across something I couldn't solve. I'd go home and then literally I didn't go back for 3 days. And the one thing I learned was if you solve it and you go home on a high, you always want to go back the next day. So if you're ever building a layout, try and get through any problems on the day rather than facing them the next day. And I really kind of bore that in mind, and yeah, it really worked for me. So if I can give one small tip, that will be mine.
Excellent.
Yeah, the other person that needs to know about Eric Tracy is Jane McDonald, because when she did the programme on Wakefield Cathedral, she left out Eric Tracy.
Did she? God, yeah. I always remember Eric Tracy because he spoke just like, well, I suppose we should say the King's English. He was so well spoken and well mannered, but he was a tremendous guy. And yeah, I think did they have a memorial for him at Settle and Carlisle at Appleby Station, I think, with Evening Star there in the 80s or something like that.
They've got a loco. There's a Black Fire.
That's right. Of course there is. Yeah.
Brilliant. Had the bishop come. No, but she should have known that because she was going there.
Yeah.
Kid, and she should. I'm surprised she didn't mention it on the programme. She needs to be told about that if she doesn't know the programme. He's the most famous bishop of Wakefield, and he wasn't even mentioned.
Crazy.
The Blackfriars on the North York Moors Railway.
Oh, is it? Right.
Ellis Clark, who are producing a no-gauge model of a Blackfire, have included amongst one of the choices Eric Tracy. But
brilliant.
It's with rather than B R number, it's as an LMS
right. Yeah.
number.
Brilliant.
Well, we ought to thank him because he's the one who got you down to the railway all the time. Of course.
Yeah. Tremendous guy. Yeah, he died too soon, unfortunately. But there we go.
He was taking a photograph at the time, wasn't he? He died on the lines.
Yeah. Appleby Station. Yeah, it was. That's right.
I was only looking at the plaque yesterday.
Where?
Yeah. We stopped for about half an hour at Appleby to take on water.
Right.
On the train that Royal Scot took from Euston to Carlisle yesterday, and it stopped at Appleby to take on water for about half an hour. So yeah, the plaque was there, but the only trouble was it was pouring down at the time.
Yeah, it always does when you go on a steam chart.
Yeah, that's right.
Another thank you, Simon. An evening
pleasure.
very well
Thank
spent
you.
for John Armstrong, and lots of other thank yous coming in. And I think
Oh, thanks
on
to
that
everybody for
note,
listening.
you know,
Thank you.
really, really appreciate a very comprehensive evening. And it's been lovely to hear about how it all started and all the developments. And as somebody said, good luck for the future, and we'll see you
you.
next month.
Yeah, thanks again.
At
Really
least we've
appreciate
got
it.
Sunbury in the right place now, not Sudbury.
Yeah, we got it altered. Thank you very much. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next month. Hopefully see you at Wakefield when Simon
Yeah.
is hosting a visit from us. And do book your tickets for that while there's still some available. And Simon, see you soon. Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Simon.
thank you.
Thank you.
Simon, thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Yeah, see ya.